And welcome back, everybody, to yet another beautiful day in the Freedom & Company garage. It has been a hot minute since we have recorded a video just because we've been waiting on a ton of parts, but now we've got all our parts and we have a plan, so let's get to it. So we've got the bike taken back apart now. We've got all the fairings off. We have the tank set up on the weld bench over here. We have our auxiliary tanks on the bench ready for some welding on there. And we have a ton of parts ready to go. So what we're waiting on mostly, we're trying to come up with a plan for how we want to run our fuel system. That has been one of the biggest challenges so far, just because with what we're doing in our tank setups. And we also have a plan for after everything is done. And these parts will all be compatible with the modifications that we will be doing after as an add-on. So little teaser there. But so what we have here are a ton of AN fittings, weld-on bungs, pretty much everything we're going to need and more for plumbing our entire fuel system. This is our fuel pump that we're going to be running. Unfortunately, it's a little bit bigger than we were hoping, but it is the only one that we could find with a high enough fuel pressure and the right fuel flow for what we're going to be doing. And then this is the fuel pressure regulator. It's a nice little Fuelab unit. And so we will be doing a returned fuel setup on this bike, kind of like a traditional car would be. And that will allow us to do a few different things later. So these are all the parts, plenty of AN, hose, fittings, all that stuff. We also have a brand new radiator down here with a radiator fan. That way we can start mocking some of that stuff up. And we've got a few little things in these boxes here that we will show you guys later. We're changing a few other things up, and that's what's in here. So to get started, this is our stock Grom fuel tank that we have cut in half and cut the end off of it so it will fit on our bike in between our frame rails and underneath all of the fairings. So our goal was to make everything look stock and still have a stock filler neck up top here, and this will feed the two tanks back here where most of our fuel will be stored. So on this guy, we have to cut a bottom and a backside out of this steel plate or sheet metal, whatever you want to call it, and weld it onto the bottom. And then we will be welding our transfer tube from this tank to these tanks onto the bottom there as well. All right, so now we have our Grom gas tank all prepped and ready for welding here. And we have made our bottom plate, and this is going to sit right inside of the bottom here. And that will be how that is. And then we went ahead and made a crease in the bottom. That way when the fuel is in the tank, it'll all come down to this middle point here, and that's where we're gonna have our transfer tube. So all that fuel should funnel down into that tube and into our other tanks there. So now that we're all prepped and ready, we're gonna start tacking this bottom onto this tank, and we will see how it goes. And just like that, now we have our bottom all tacked into place. So as you guys saw, fitting and welding with sheet metal can be somewhat tedious at points. So I just started in one spot on the edge, and then basically it's just forming the sheet metal around this heavier plate. So this stuff is way thicker than the Grom tank material. And so all it is you're just gonna tack one spot, come over, you can see me squish it down, hammer it down, place another tack. And I did a lot of hot tacking, which was kind of bridging a small gap and then just hammering that tack down. That way it sits flush with everything in there. So after doing all that fitting and hot tacking and all that stuff, we have a nice tight seam all the way around, which will make it really nice and easy to weld. So now we are going to go ahead and kind of cut out our back plate and do the same process there. And one quick time lapse later, and we've got our tank all welded up. So we have our end cap cut and welded on there. We've got our bottom all welded out. Now we are going to pressure test this to make sure it's not going to leak. So we threw the gas cap back on. That is sealed up with an O-ring, and we're going to use this ventilation tube to pressurize the tank just with a few pounds of pressure, more like 40, which is more than it would ever take for gasoline or liquid to leak out. But we are going to submerge it in some water and then add some pressure, and we will watch for air bubbles coming out from all of our weld zones. All right, so I've got it in the bucket here, and we're just gonna add some light pressure. Doesn't look like we have any bubbles coming up. So that was all the air pressure coming out of the tank through the hose, back through the hose to escape. So that means that we were pressurized quite a bit and we didn't see any bubbles, so we should be all good. So we're gonna dry this off quick before it starts rusting, and then we can start building some tabs for our bike. Alright guys, so we put one side of the fairings on. Well, actually I had both sides of the fairings on. We just took this side off because we're going to start taking it back apart. But I put everything on there, that way we can see exactly where the tank is supposed to sit when it lines up with everything else and the rear part of the fairings over here. So I just want to show you guys what we're working with under here. We really don't have much room, so I've got about 1 finger width of clearance in between our fuel rail, and then you can see back here it tucks in just perfect behind our air filter. So our feed line from this tank that will go down to this tank so everything fills at once is actually going to have to snake right in between our 2 intake runners, right in between there. So I was putting this on here that way I know exactly where to weld it on the bottom of this tank, so everything lines up and it goes right in between those 2 guys. So all this stuff is definitely going to be a really tight fit, and that is our biggest challenge with everything because we have a lot to fit in such a small package here. So once we have that on, then we can run our line from there back and make sure that fits, and then we're going to start working on our aluminum tanks back here. But kind of throughout this whole process, we have to remember that we still have to fit our fuel pump somewhere in here, as well as our fuel pressure regulator, and how we're going to route the lines from those 2 units to our fuel rail and the pump, and then back to our return line, back to our storage tanks in the rear. So there's a lot to go in here, so we're just going to keep on plugging away. I'm going to take this back off, take all the plastic bits off again, and weld the -12 AN fitting on the bottom of that tank. Alright guys, so now we have our -12 AN fitting all welded up nice on the bottom of our tank, and we also welded in this 3/8 NPT bung on the side of the tank. This is going to be an air vent that will go from the top of our storage tanks in the rear over to here, and that will help displace the air in the tank, that way the gas can fill it up. So we'll explain that a little bit more later. So we got that fitting welded on there, that one on there, and now the tank should be all complete. The only thing we have left to weld on here are some mounting tabs. So I've got some tabs that we bought pre-made. It was actually cheaper just to buy them. It wasn't worth our time when they were that cheap. So we got some tabs. We will have to put the fairings back on, set this where it goes, and then try to locate everything and tack weld them in place, and then bolt the tank in, and then that will be completely done for now. All right, guys, you watched the painful process of trying to get this thing mounted where it needs to go. So unfortunately for us, this Grom tank is where most of the plastics locate from. So this piece here and this piece here is going to dictate where everything else is going to sit. So this was crucial to get in the exact spot where it needs to be. That way all the plastics line up with the body lines, with the seat lines, with the tail lines. And so it was a challenge to say the least, but we are done. So we got this done. Everything is looking good. So on the rear, we welded on some threaded bosses on the two corners here, and it's kind of on a hinge system now, so we can flip that up and you can see the bottom of our tank now. So you can see one tab here, one tab there. That's where the rear of the tank is mounted to. And then in the front, we just did a single tab right in the middle of this crossbar here, and that is what this tab mates up to when it swings down. So we can take this bolt out here. So I welded a nut on the back side, that way we don't have to worry about fumbling with the nut when we're trying to get in this tight little spot. But you can see when it sits down there, man, it is dark. So we've got that nut right back in there, and that lines up really nice. That way we just throw that one bolt in there, and then we've got our 3 mounting points all the way around, and our gas tank is nice and secure. So now that we've got that done, we can finally go ahead and start working on our rear section back here. All right, y'all, so I think we're gonna call it a night tonight. It is nice and dark outside. It is getting late. It's been a full day. It doesn't really feel like we got a whole lot done because all we did is really finish out this one little gas tank. But kind of thinking back, we actually did do a lot. So we cut out the full bottom plate, the full back plate. We welded on the transfer AN fitting back there. We welded on our vent tube in the rear. We got everything set up exactly where we need it to in terms of our mounting tabs. Got all of that figured out and welded onto our frame. So it really sets us up for a good day tomorrow to really knock out the rest of our fuel system in the rear and get all of our plumbing done for our fuel system, and then hopefully we can do a capacity check and a pressure check on our entire system. So once again, if you guys like this kind of stuff, if you like watching our videos, please just take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you guys want to support us with what we are doing, check out our Patreon account. Every dollar that y'all donate goes straight to this build, ordering parts, and is going straight towards kind of smashing some of those speed records that we're going after with building this bike here. So yeah, like, subscribe. So that's going to be it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time.